We were in like a call collections environment. There was like 500 of us in this call center doing like small loans and lending and customer complaints. It was so much fun, Holly Tate. So much fun.
Sounds riveting.
It was riveting, but
like honestly, my eyes just glazed over while you were saying that. To be
We'll
honest,
move on. We'll move on.
Welcome to the Leadr Pulse podcast, the podcast with actionable insights for leaders revolutionizing the world of work. I'm Holly Tate, your host and Chief Marketing Officer here at Leadr. In today's episode, Matt gets to talk with Patrick Lencioni. Pat and the Table Group have become partners of ours here at Leadr, as together we have built Leadr Advantage, the full organizational health platform. In this episode, Matt and Pat talk about what a true leader is motivated by. Is it power or is it influence? Let's find out from Matt and Pat.
Okay, so my question for you, under the umbrella of the motive, my question is, why is leaders being motivated by power a bad thing? Because there have been so many leaders over the world that have been motivated by power and have done good things. So why is it a bad thing to be motivated by power?
Yeah, and sometimes good things can come even from the wrong motivation. But a true leader is motivated by influence for the benefit of others. When you're motivated by power, and they say power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, then your motivation from the very beginning, and it comes down to this. It's so interesting, Matt, because what it really is when you're motivated by that, you will reject the kind of work that you have to do that's in service of others if it doesn't enhance your power. So I like to say there's two motives for leading. There's serving others, and there's authority and power, if you will, involved in that, but that's not your motivation. And then there's self-service, if you will, or you're doing it for yourself, for the rewards that you get out of it, one of which is power or money or fame or freedom to do whatever you feel like doing. Well, a leader that's motivated by those things, the rewards, is going to look at some parts of his or her job and go, I don't want to do that. Right. I don't feel like doing that. That doesn't enhance my power. That doesn't make me more famous. That's not giving me money. But the leader who's motivated by serving others and exercising their authority or power for the good of others is going to lean into whatever's necessary to make the company, the customers, the world a better place. So the motive influences what you're willing to do.
And then what about the leaders that don't reflect that, but still seem to be mover and shakers? I think the classic example is like a Jack Welch. Probably not motivated by servant leadership, but the guy got things done. The guy really was a mover and shaker for a decade or more.
It's interesting, and I didn't really meet Jack Welch. I met his wife, and but I think though, what's interesting about him, and by the way, people change in life. Sure. Like sometimes you slide into one or the other. I think initially he was motivated by getting things done through other people, but that getting things done was to serve customers and to make a difference. I think early on, because I think the way they went about things. Now, I do think though that even if you've got any fissures in that motivation, and if you do get caught up in the power, and many leaders who once had good intentions, once they achieve a modicum or two of success, might go, hey, it's time for me to start taking care of myself. And then that's why I think so many leaders, political leaders, maybe they ran for office in their early days for a certain reason, but they get corrupted. And we all have to be aware of that. I've slid into that in my career where we started to be successful and I started coming to work thinking, I kind of just want to do what I feel like doing. That was serving me, not our customers, not our company. And I had to kind of catch myself and go, no. I have to preserve the purity of my intentions and my motive, which is it's about our customers and my employees, and that's how we're going to make the world better. Now, the Silicon Valley is full of all these famous CEOs that I think are very driven by their own motives, by rewards. I think many of them are dangerous. And for every device that comes out or good thing that happens, there's so much damage being done. And so I think it's important that we not just look at the most visible outcome and realize that there's a trail of destruction behind them that can't be ignored.
Right. Okay. And then I believe, and I want this to be true, but I believe most leaders don't wake up in the day and think, I want to be a terrible leader today. I think most people do wake up with the right motives. So they might be blind spots. They might not know they have them. Do you have any advice to someone on how to not slip into some of those? Because I think you're right. It's a gradual thing over time, but how do you not slip into that?
Well, and I will say this, and knowing what I know about Leadr, most of the people that are buying your stuff get it.
Mm,
If they're partnering with you, you're probably right. They have the right motives. And then you just have to check your intentions. And you're like, for me, it's prayer and being in touch with the people and having empathy for the people around me, my customers, my employees. But I would not agree with you. I think that many leaders actually are raised to make it about themselves. And the
wow.
most dangerous ones are the ones that pretend it's not, but deep down inside they are.
Okay.
And that's not, I don't mean that in a cynical way. I just think we raise people today to say, what are you going to get out of this? What are you going to do?
Mm,
And the question is really, the the most successful CEOs are not famous.
right.
And there's even companies that are famous that like I could ask you right now and you go, yeah, I don't even know what the CEO looks like.
Right.
And then
Right.
there's these other tech companies or media companies where the CEO loves being in the spotlight. And so I would say just constantly purify your intentions and don't let yourself start to look at it as a reward.
Mm.
A leader should be a burden. It should be a burden to be a leader, a burden that you take
Right.
on and you're glad to do.
So the part that I struggle with in this conversation with Pat around influence versus power in leadership is I agree, like I think leaders should be motivated by influence. However, I can't think of a leader that has in my brain of how I would define like success that is truly only driven by influence. And so I think that's where I struggle with this. Is like, yes, leaders should be driven by altruistic motivation.
Right.
But I think of like the people who come to mind are like politicians or, very like, again, quote unquote, successful business leaders who have achieved the title or the prestige or the wealth, which as I'm saying this, maybe it's a me problem that I'm equating success to fame or money or title. And I think that is what Pat's trying to say is like, it's not about that. It's about influence. So anyway, that's just where I struggle with. I don't know. Do you struggle with that?
Is it the people you know that you've worked with, or is it the people you don't know that you see from afar?
The people I don't know that I see from afar.
Yeah.
That there's part of them that I want to have that, right?
Yes.
But I can't, but at the same time, I don't want to model what I would view as their leadership style, but I
Yeah, 'cause
want their
we've
fame
all,
and prestige.
I get it, because we've all heard the stories of like the movers and shakers of industries of how they're awful to work with. And I
Mhm.
think outside looking in, it's easy for us to kind of sweep that under the rug because we didn't work for them directly, so we didn't get our feelings hurt. But look at the amazing things they did for the world. They created the iPhone. They're sending people to Mars. Like we can gloss over all of those things. But when you work with them directly, it's like I think it's really hard to see past those things because all you see is the experience that you have on a day-to-day basis. So I've certainly worked with leaders directly that led via influence, not power, and certainly I've had the reverse. But I'm struggling to also find who's the leader from afar that's had incredible influence that wasn't motivated by power.
Yeah. Well, I can think of plenty that have had input. So I think about like Mother Teresa, right? Or I think about
Right.
there was somebody else that just came to mind that I forgot. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of, or like Martin Luther King. I mean, there's so many people who have led with influence, who have literally changed the world.
Yes.
However, and again, this is just me processing like how I define success is probably part of the problem, but like people who are in positions of power,
Mm.
I struggle to think of one who I see as admirable when it comes to being a true leader or a person of influence who is in a place of power. Does that make sense? Maybe it's people who have a large amount of people that they have power over.
I know they didn't have a lot of people over them, but I've worked for a quintessential power-driven manager and they were not in it for helping the team, helping the business. They were in it for like protecting their own career. But I hear what you're saying about someone with massive power, like running countries.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to that manager example. Do you feel like, did they drive results for the business? Like, were they successful in their role? Truly?
They were successful enough to not get noticed. Like successful enough to not like be on anyone's radar, but not unsuccessful enough to get fired. So I'll share the story. So it was the first manager that I worked for just out of college. And when I say out of college, I mean I dropped out of college. I didn't actually finish college, just for the record. So I went and worked for this manager. I was working at a bank, and I came in and I was 22, and I was the youngest person on the team by a long shot. And I just said to myself, I want to be the best. I want to break the records. We were in like a call collections environment. There was like 500 of us in this call center doing like small loans and lending and customer complaints. It was so much fun, Holly Tate. So much fun.
Sounds riveting.
It was riveting, but
like honestly, my eyes just glazed over while you were saying that. To be
we'll
honest.
move on. We'll move on. The point being that I was really motivated. I wanted to put my name out there, and I wanted to be successful. And so I came in my first 3 to 6 months, I tried really hard to do the most calls per day, the least amount of breaks per day, the shortest amount of time between calls, and all my metrics like well beyond the green. Unfortunately, what happened was my colleagues who had been in that role for 15, 20, sometimes 25 years, like lifers, people that have been at this company, this bank forever, they went and complained to my manager because I was making them look bad. And in turn, I was making my manager look bad because how come the rest of their team wasn't functioning the same way? So they literally sat me down, Holly, and had a one-on-one and said to me, hey, you need to work less and slow down, because otherwise I'm going to have to motivate my team to work harder. You're making me look bad. You're making the rest of my team look bad. So to me, that's someone that's motivated by self-interest, that's motivated by doing what's best for them, best for their career, not what's best for everybody else, because they had no desire to do what was best for the organization. They were just trying to do which didn't get them noticed from their boss. That drove me nuts. I quit within, I think, 6 months, 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, well, because that's such the opposite of who you are too. Like, hey, be a slacker. Like, what?
I know. I like it when people tell me things are impossible. I don't like it when people tell me things that is like, do less.
Yeah, that's a great example. Well,
but
and I know,
to your point though, they weren't in like, they were self-driven, but they weren't in a position of what you're, I think, describing.
Yeah, I think, and I'm making this very philosophical, and I think it's because it's something that I, just candidly, I've been thinking about over the last few years. We need more great leaders that are in the spotlight, that are truly driven by influence and not power.
Yep. I like describing them as reluctant leaders. I want more reluctant leaders, because a reluctant leader is someone that knows that they're going to have to work harder, knows that it's going to be more stressful, know that there's going to be more responsibility. And so they're reluctant to do it because it's not actually what's best for them, but they end up choosing to do it because they know it's what's best for the team, what's best for the organization. Those are my favorite type of leaders.
It's so good. Well, and I know for myself, I've been there before where, I shared a few episodes ago, a very vulnerable story of when I led the sales team. And I forgot my why. Like my mission, my personal mission statement, it's like 3 paragraphs, but the part that sums it all up is to help people reach their full potential, achieving more than they ever thought they could.
Yeah.
That is a leader driven by influence. When I'm at my healthiest state, that is awesome, right? But I forgot that and was like, do what I say, we're going to drive results, numbers, and I didn't end up driving results that I wanted to. And so I think that's the point that Pat is trying to make, which is so true and such a good reminder. I just want to see more great leaders that are famous, that are driven by influence. That's all.
Yeah. And maybe some of them are, it just doesn't come off that way.
That's true. Yeah. Who am I to know what behind closed doors, what they look like, what they do leading their teams, or it's true.
But I think it comes out most when you're in your darkest times.
Yes.
Right? When you're on top of the mountain, the why, it's not really at the forefront. People might not be able to tell like what your initial drivers and motivations are. But the moment it's the fan, excuse the French, I think that's the moment that people begin to see the chinks in the armor, and they're like, oh, there's like unhealthy stubbornness coming through, or there's like ego creeping in, or oh, that's a weird reason to be motivated. That's not coming from a place of caring for others. And so I think it's easy to, again, I think it's easy to forgive when everything's going all beautifully and amazing.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, so I think for me, I don't know about you, Matt, but the practical action step that I took away from this conversation with Pat is to really check ourselves. Like, are we truly driven by influence or is it power? And it's tempting to be driven by power because of, I think, what we see in the world. But when we're truly motivated by influence, that's how we make the biggest impact and drive the best results for our teams.
And if you're hiring or looking to fill a seat of like a leadership role at the moment, I think it's checking through the interview loops, through those conversations, checking their motivation, trying to really dig deep to find out under the hood, what is their motivation for wanting to step in to take this role. And what's the saying? Like, it's only going to get magnified on the other end of the journey. So if they have tiny little grips of, well, I really want to be in the spotlight, I really want to get noticed, I really want to be the one that like gets the credit for this. Once they're in the role, that's only going to get magnified. That's only going to get worse.
So true. That's a great point. Good reminder, as we're building our teams, look for leaders that are driven by influence and not by power.
Yes.
But thanks for listening to the Leadr Pulse podcast. Hope you enjoyed today's episode with Patrick Lencioni, Matt Tresidder, and myself as we unpacked this idea of, should you talk about politics in the workplace? I don't know about you, but I walked away with some actionable insights around really driving clarity around our mission and our values. We'd love for you to check out the Leadr Advantage, which is our platform in partnership with Pat and the Table Group. You can check it out at leadr.com/table-group. That's leadr.com/table-group. You can also just go to our homepage and talk to our team, learn more. There at the top header, it says the Leadr Advantage. You can check it out right there. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Leadr Pulse podcast.